swing.
Yeah.
She also has, I'm not exactly sure how to turn it into.
Yeah. Email to me? Oh, cool.
So Aman, I have, Sue wants me to snap a picture of you and your two colleagues.
Okay.
With a great banner. Can we just do that really quick?
Yeah, we can do that, yeah. All right, Andrew, Nick, you gotta take a picture with this.
Oh, we're taking a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sue wants me to take a picture. So I'm gonna take a picture right now so I don't forget.
Okay.
You want me?
Right down.
Portrait. Yeah, it looks nice. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna get going now that the photos are all snapped. We're gonna start. Welcome to the last Create seminar series for this year. We certainly will resume in the fall, but it's my pleasure to introduce Aman. I think many of you know him. He's a faculty member here at the College of Ed, so we're really pleased to have Aman and his colleagues. I do not know Ann or Nick, but welcome, thank you. And they're going to talk about using generative AI in education, equipping teachers, their work that they do with teachers. So Aman, thank you so much for being here. I know he's also on sabbatical.
Yeah.
So just imagine how nice that is, right? And ARA just got over. Just imagine how nice. So you can have all these things on top of each other, right? Anyway, so thank you, all of you, very much for being here and doing the last session. So we appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. I know it's a busy time of the year, and those on Zoom, hopefully you can all see the slides and hear us. So I'm Aman Yadav. I'm a faculty in EdSec and EdTech and Computational Math Science and Engineering Department, and I have two of my graduate students. I'll let them.
Hey, my name's Andrew Hu. I am a fourth-year PhD student advised by Aman, and in the EPED program.
My name is Nick Schwarz. I'm currently a first-year CMSE graduate student, so it's Computational Math Science Engineering over the Engineering Department.
So we're going to talk about some of the work that we did last summer with teacher education faculty in New York. So this, the work that we did is part of a larger effort that's funded by a few foundations and New York Department of Education on integrating computing and digital literacies into teacher education programs within the CUNY system. So CUNY has 16 colleges, I think, right? So we have teacher education faculty from all those colleges as a part of this site initiative. It's called Computing Integrated Teacher Education Program. My colleague Ankit Patel is the director of the program, and Dr. Sarah Vogel is the director of research for that program. And both Nick and Andrew have worked on that project for the last few years. Nick worked last summer, but Andrew worked for the last couple of years on that project. So within this, last summer, there were several summer camps that we called, summer workshops for teacher education faculty to develop competencies to learn about computing and digital literacies. So what does that mean? Like CDL, computing and digital literacies, involved different things. One was a camp on just learning Scratch as a programming environment for faculty that wanted to integrate Scratch into their programming. We led the AI and education camp. It was asynchronous work, so 4 modules that faculty went through before they came to a week-long professional development. It was all asynchronous. So we had about 21 faculty who were part of it.
It wasn't all asynchronous. We had
Yeah. It was all online, virtual, not in person. So we did that work. So within this, for the AI and camp, so a lot of things that we present today came from that work. So one of the things that we found, or that we've been thinking about, is this confusion between what is machine learning and what is AI, right? My student Zach Ops just defended his dissertation successfully yesterday, and he interviewed 29 computer science teachers about what do they think the role of AI is in the classroom. And they often confuse machine learning and AI, right? Which are not the same thing, right? So we just wanted to introduce machine learning first, and then Andrew's gonna lead an activity, an unplugged activity, no computers, on like how does machine learning actually work for those that may not be familiar. So machine learning is all around us, right? So the Google Translate, when Netflix recommends what my daughter should watch next based on Taylor Swift, and then also like self-driving cars, right? So basically recognizing patterns and then using those patterns to make predictions or decisions, right? That's what machine learning is. It's all around us. And then I'll hand it over to
Yeah, so we wanted to start with our teacher education faculty, most of whom have no background in like machine learning or computationals, the algorithms, by kind of like giving a simple kind of algorithm to show how machine learning might find some of these patterns, right? So in this activity, you can imagine that, say we have a bunch of pictures of horses, and we're trying to find the pattern of which of these horses are going to bite based on their behavior expressed through their facial expressions. So in this example, I want you to take a look at these, like the different features of these horses, and see if you can find a pattern among the different facial features, like their eyes and the mouth, to try and categorize which of the horses should go into the biting category and which should go into the not biting category. And then we'll try and apply that to some new data.
So we already know that these horses actually bite and those
Right.
don't bite. Right?
So this is our training data set. We're trying to train ourselves to find this pattern, and then we're going to try and apply that pattern. They'll give you, you can like turn to talk to the people around you, give you a couple minutes to think about this.
Well, they're gonna, I guess, we don't even have to.
Oh, yeah, sure.
At first I was going to say the Irish was, but it's not true, 16.
Right, so it's eyes closed or mouth open. Right? Is the one that I got too fast?
Eyes are closed.
I don't. Or it's up.
There's
Terra's up, the only
No.
options are mouth and eyes, right?
Right.
He has her eye closed too,
So there's only.
But-
or and
but he doesn't have his teeth shown.
Yeah.
So eyes closed
So,
with teeth,
so all the mouth
doesn't
openings
eyes closed,
are
don't see one
biters,
bite.
right? But
we
all the eyes closed are not biters.
Yeah, or, but
doesn't matter.
And is there anything else?
Closed eye.
Well, 16 has his eyes closed, his mouth open.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So
It's
all,
like that's the one
right,
that's
so,
ruining the eyes closed.
so it's probably, it's first,
very aggressive horse.
if mouth open, must be biter, right? And then,
Right, so if it's
if
teeth,
mouth closed and
and
eyes
closed
closed,
doesn't
must not be
bite.
biter.
If it's closed and you don't see teeth.
Everything else is
bite.
biter.
Well, fine.
Right, that's the only thing I can kind of think of.
Eyes closed.
We're gonna
I was saying
What
5
X
looks
is
friendly.
saying outside of.
Makes sense.
You're right, it's like dead horses don't bite, yeah. But that's.
I mean, I don't know what the X represents other than that.
All right, so this
But that's
Have
sort
you
of
all
knowledge
looked at the
outside the
idea
training set,
about
right? You know, that's like
what
bringing,
kind of pattern
bringing prior
we find
knowledge.
here. So does anybody want to volunteer? What do you think is the pattern?
Go ahead.
You know, it could be a hypothesis. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect.
The eye is X. When
Okay.
is eye X? No matter what,
Mhm.
does not bite.
Okay. So if they have,
No, that's not true. Oh, X.
so if they have the X, okay, and Jen?
Here's my team member.
Yeah.
It looked to us like the no biters have eyes and mouth closed.
Okay, so that's a theory. Only if the eyes and mouth are closed, then they won't bite. Okay, so that's a theory. Let's try and apply this to some new sample data. So for these first one, for these, we're gonna go through and think, do you think they bite or not? Okay, so for number 3, is it gonna bite?
No.
No. Okay, number 6?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Number 8?
No.
No. Number 11?
Yes. No bite.
Okay, interesting. Number 13?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and 15?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the.
So according to Jen's theory, if they have to have both their eyes closed and the mouth closed to not bite. So if they have the eyes closed but their mouth is open, then we would theorize that the pattern would say that they do bite. And so this is a decision tree algorithm that we could generate based on the training data to try and find that pattern. And so you can imagine, this is a kind of machine learning algorithm, is you ask several questions and you go down the tree. So if it has at least one eye open, then yes, it's going to bite. But if it doesn't, then we also have to check, is the mouth open? And if it doesn't have the mouth open, that's the only situation in which we believe that it would not bite. But what's important to stress to our teacher educators when we're introducing them to machine learning is that this isn't necessarily like the fundamentals, or isn't necessarily like magically true, right? So in this example with the horses, we're trying to find a pattern, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the perfect algorithm for deciding whether a horse is going to bite or not, right? This is kind of our hypothesis algorithm, and so machine learning isn't magic. It's trying to find patterns, and we'll see how well those work based on our training data and applying that in the real world.
So based on doing this real quick, so based on more slide please.
Oh yeah.
So the other way.
Sorry.
So based on this, 6, 13, and 15 bite, and the other horses do not bite. I was just trying to look at the speaker notes.
Yeah.
Right. If, applying our
Right.
algorithm. Does it have at least one eye open? Yes. Right. So 6, 13, and 15. Right.
Yes, those are the ones that have at least one eye. 6 and 13 have at least one eye open, and then 15 doesn't, but it does have its mouth open.
Right.
Yes.
So I should also add credit to this. We developed this activity with my colleague Mark Burgess, who's a faculty at Frederick Alexander University in Germany.
Great.
Right. I'll hand it over to. Sorry. Go ahead.
Is it possible to press OK up there because that bar up there gets in the way of the titles?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, and just to connect this machine learning to getting towards AI, we made a natural language processing unplugged activity. So it's still machine learning, but it's a different kind of machine learning. So there's not just classification. So what we just did was classifying things into groups based on different parameters. And here, what we're doing is we're taking natural language processing. So we're looking at language, and we're trying to identify things about the language and draw conclusions from that. So the model that we're going to be working with is we're going to look at different types of questions that are going to be closed-ended or open-ended. So it's still a classification problem, but instead of looking at images, we're doing natural language processing. We're going to do a very basic model where we're going to look at some training data. So it'll be a set of questions that are classified as either closed-ended or open-ended, and we're going to identify key words that you could say, this word is what makes this question open-ended or closed-ended. So up here, we're going to input then a test question, and then we're going to say, does this test question have one of those keywords we identified that makes a question open-ended? And if yes, it'll be an open-ended question. If no, it'll be a closed-ended question. So here, I would like you to take a few minutes and look at open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, and try to see on the open-ended questions, what words in there do you see would be a key word that you could say, this is the word that makes this sentence open-ended. Now this is a very basic natural language processing model because we're not taking the context of the sentence. We're just trying to look at a singular word that you could say, this word shows that this question would be open-ended. So it may take 3 minutes, talk about it, think about it.
Well, all the closed are today's, obviously. But when you go on the other side,
need any clarification, feel free to ask.
Okay, just, we should,
So, here's
that we actually, inspired by
Just looking at this side, right? And then I was trying to come up with what the rule would be to exclude the code days that are over here.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's how I did it.
okay, okay.
Right. We have some ideas?
This one's way tougher than ours.
Yeah. We have to assume you've given us open and closed questions, because those could be open as well.
I'll get to that.
Oh, okay,
you could answer.
you'll get.
I think this is fun activity actually, but open one is more kind of feeling, and then the strategy and explain and challenging. So using the more kind of complex wording, but the other one is did. So was, so it's very kind of that is but it's fun activity, but that is my kind of as a language person, I find it that kind of differences.
Well, close-ended is singular. Class,
Good point.
right? Today, right? It's like,
That's
it's
the
I feel like the patterns
singular.
that would come up don't make sense.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
analysis. So
Uh-huh.
this is that
Yeah.
you can identify things that are unique to one or the other, but they're not
Right.
really meeting
Yeah.
the criteria.
Because typically you would just go by this,
Yeah,
right?
you can't.
Which doesn't work in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
So what you identified is exactly correct. Natural language processing,
Go ahead.
natural language processing is very complex.
Yes.
So when you make a model to try to analyze language, there are tons of contextual things you need to take into account. But with this model, we wanted to identify singular keywords. So with those open-ended questions, the keywords we were trying to identify were motivated, feel, question, strategy, explain, challenging, up at the top there. And I made just example questions that you could still ask and are valid questions, and some that are open-ended, closed-ended. And based on the color here, if they're correct, it's called a true positive or true negative. So the model would have classified it correctly. If it's red, that is a false positive. So that means the question would be seen as closed-ended, but based on how we identified our keywords, our model would incorrectly identify as open-ended. And then orange, false negative, where it said it was not an open-ended question, but it would be an open-ended question. And the purpose of all this is that, well, again, language is very complex. A model needs to take context into account. So if you're trying to develop a model to analyze language, you have to have it be very complex, very hard to manage, and very large, just because of how large and complex language is in general. And if you look back, we did identify, like if you look at the orange one, motivation. So we did have motivated as a keyword, but because we're looking only at words, we're not thinking about root words or conjugation, the model misclassified that question. So the purpose of all this and how this connects to then large language models is large language models like ChatGPT will use natural language processing to look at the input you give it to then generate a response. I apologize, I'm wrong. But so real world example NLP, so it's like LLM, they've taken that email filters, they will analyze emails you get, and based on its training, it will sort it automatically into spam, autocomplete, autocorrect on your phone, and then smart assistants like Alexa, Siri, they use NLP to analyze your voice, generate text, and then analyze that. So again, the connection between LLMs and NLP is LLMs use NLP to analyze your input. And the purpose of this activity is just to show, as you identified, just how complex NLP is. And while these models are very robust, they still have issues and exploits. So one thing is called a prompt injection attack. And you don't need to know everything about that, but essentially it is writing a prompt, something to the model in such a way that it will get around the safeguards on the model. So some models, they won't want to generate certain content. Like if you're in an educational setting, you won't want it to generate like explicit content or something like that. But if you had a very general model that was trained on a huge data set, and we'll talk about data that models are trained on, and you're able to get through the safeguards because of the complexity of NLP, that would be a problem. So some drawbacks of LLMs, so they are trained on data, like every single model, and a lot of this data was user generated, so online, so biases in the writings can show up then again on the models in their answers. And another thing is if they need to be able to answer any question a student may ask about a topic, you would have to have every single fact possible that they could ask about. And that would require a very large model and a lot of storage and be very hard to manage and say, what is the correct fact, how do we want to present this, etc. Another issue is accessibility. So I've noticed while teaching this semester, some students are able to pay the $20 a month for the ChatGPT 4, which is a lot more powerful than the free and open ChatGPT 3.5. Now, it may not impact their grade as much right now, but it definitely is a difference in accessibility of what resources students have been able to use in the classroom while they're teaching.
Another issue in terms of drawbacks is also the impact on climate. Right? All these data centers that they drive, especially in the middle of Arizona, amount of power they're drawing and the amount of water that they need as having a negative environmental impact on wherever these data centers go. Like U.S. energy consumption is exponentially growing because of these large data centers after declining or flatlining over the last several years, right? So as we think about impact on climate, there's a real impact on climate because of these data centers as well. So we wanted to show these couple of activities because we felt that it's important for teacher educators to understand like how do these tools work, right? Like machine learning is everywhere, what's the impact on theirs, and how does LLMs and like things like ChatGPT work. Another thing we also wanted to highlight, this is from a Washington Post article, like where does ChatGPT get its data from, right? And like 16% of what ChatGPT is trained on is from business and industrial websites. Websites like Fool.com, which is a private company that does stock recommendation. Kickstarter, SEC, MarketWire, CityData.com, right? So 16% of the data, and these are the top 5 websites, right? Community, right? It's like, oh, it's a good thing, they do the community data, but no, it's weddingwire.com, I don't even know what's up with that.com, like jewishworldreview.com, right? So those are the 5 main websites within the community websites that it's drawing its data on. Finally, technology. Instructables, which is where you find manuals and stuff or how to build things. Microsoft, forums.macrumors.com. When I have problems with my Mac, I go there. Got solve problem. Medium.com, which is a blogging website, right? So anybody can write a blog post, right? So as we see, not a lot of the data that ChatGPT is driven by is based on scientific evidence or research, right? It's just data, right, from the internet.
I think you missed one there, right? Go back to business and industrial. You were classifying the Securities and Exchange Commission as a business and industrial, not a government.
Yeah, but it's a one website, right, out of that, right? So, but still, like, there's a huge problems with what ChatGPT then generates, right? And I'll give some examples of that in a minute. But I want you to read this quote and then tell me what technology is this quote talking about?
Every technology for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
15 years?
50.
50 years. Other, any specific technologies? Radio?
I think it's over 100.
Over 100, right? Yeah.
He's older than me.
Yeah.
It's about a couple of years back.
It's talking about chalkboard.
Uh-huh.
It's from a New York Times article from 1840, right? So AI is just another technology that's come in, So I think it's important to understand as we think about generative AI and its implications within these histories of tech bros leading these companies, that it's going to change everything without having teachers or educators being involved in this, right? So transitioning, so how have we been thinking about within our site framework? So we developed this framework called EnSIGHT, Entry Points to Computing Integrated Teacher Education, where we have focused on that it's important for teachers to learn about technologies, teach with the technology, through technology, and against technology. And I'll go through that in a minute here. But not only for teaching, but also for their own learning. Like teachers need to be able to use technologies to support their learning, as well as support their students' learning, right? So when it comes to about, which is what we just experienced, about getting under the hood of how machine learning works, how LLMs work, is teachers engage in conversations about technology, digital citizenship, and its impact, both from a user perspective as well as a teacher perspective. And then they strategically bring these conversations to their students. Teaching with technology is to help them explore concepts so they can themselves learn, and then also teaching with technology to support their students' learning. Through technology is about creative expression, right? Teachers express themselves in their learning through creating artifacts, right, or computational artifacts, or modifying computational artifacts. And then they use that technology to help students express themselves through creation and modification of artifacts. And then against, teachers think critically about technology to disavow, discontinue, dismantle, adjust technologies that shape their lives, their education in general, or their students' lives. And finally, same for their students as well. How does this apply to education? How can we use this framework to think about AI, right? So AI in society, it's important to understand the historical and contemporary issues in AI, right? And I'll talk about that in a minute, and how like ChatGPT, for example, fits in a longer history of AI or educational technology. Teaching with means how to teach with AI to support existing curriculum and lessons. AI and creativity, how they can use machine learning or AI to generate artwork, for example, or personalization in the classroom. And finally, ethics is about exploring the ethical issues in machine learning, and Andrew's going to touch upon that in a minute. So that's how we have taken our framework and applied it within the context of AI and education. All right, so AI and society, or about, what does that mean? There's a long history of personalized learning within education, starting in 1920s when Sidney Pressey, right, and then who's an educational psychologist, and then B.F. Skinner took the idea of teaching machines, right? Basically created a wooden box that would test students on their knowledge, right? So these are cards that would slot in there. They would have a question, and then they would write answers and rotate it to get the answer, right? And so on and so forth, right? But this is from the 1950s, so there's a long history of personalized learning within education. And then, of course, in the 90s, it was all about intelligent tutoring systems, right? So, but now it's AI as personalized learning, right? So we need to understand and prepare teachers and teacher educators to think about, how this fits in with what we know about the history of educational technology. And then also getting under the hood as well. So how do these tools actually work, right? So that fits within this as well. Of course, teaching with technology or teaching with AI, we've heard like Michael gave a workshop Michael Latchney, my colleague, on how to design lesson plans using generative AI, right? I think it's a good tool for teachers to get some initial ideas of how to develop lesson plans. But teachers also are not developing that many lesson plans. Right? Teachers at schools buy a curriculum, and teachers implement or use open source curriculum, and teachers implement that curriculum, right? So teachers also don't have an agency in terms of, designing lesson plans. Maybe there's an opportunity for them to assist with grading their students' data. Like, could it be, Michael and I have been talking about AI as a labor-saving mechanism, right? To free up teachers to do more innovative things, but the same thing was said about Blackboard, right? So we need to think about implications for teaching with AI and its implications for pedagogy and content knowledge. I'm going to show two short clips. So here's a clip that Sal Khan did about when he released Khan Academy, right? Let's video to reinvent education.
be something that would somehow penetrate the classroom. But then I started getting letters from teachers. And the teachers would write saying, we've used your videos to flip the classroom. You've given the lectures. So now what we do, and this could actually happen in every classroom in America tomorrow, what I do is I assign the lectures for homework. And what used to be homework, I now have the students doing in the classroom.
Okay.
Be something.
And then most recently, Sal Khan talking about AI.
But I think we're at the cusp of using AI for probably the biggest positive transformation that education has ever seen. And the way we're going to do that is by giving every student on the planet an artificially intelligent but amazing personal tutor. And we're going to give every teacher on the planet an amazing artificially intelligent teaching assistant.
What do you notice between those two videos? They're about like 12 years apart or so, right? Or 10 years apart. Okay, so yeah, we're wrong here, yeah. 13 years apart. Very similar pitch.
Yes.
Video was going to reinvent education, it didn't. So this tech bro decides he's going to move to AI because it's going to reinvent education, right? So again, thinking that Silicon Valley especially sells this narrative that any technology that comes in is going to change education, right? But they rarely have educators within their organizations. They rarely talk to teachers, but this idea continues to perpetuate itself, right?
But I think we're at the
right. So teaching through technology, like can you know, one I had was talking to Punya or another colleague about how AI could help, like DALL-E could help kids create things that they can't draw themselves or pictures, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna use DALL-E and ask DALL-E, give me an image of a teacher teaching robotics. So here to come up with it, like teachers teaching robotics. It captures the enthusiasm and hands-on approach to learning, right? And then I said, okay, now give me a picture of a teaching computer science class, right? You can see a teacher teaching a computer science class. Think about what do you notice in this picture? Who the students are, who the teacher is, right? And then I said, give me a picture teaching social studies. Who's teaching social studies? Who's in the class? So give me a picture of teacher teaching science. Same idea, male, white, right? Chemistry, right? The male, right? And then give me a teacher teaching English. Woman, right? So, and then at ARA, I happened to be at a poster that said, you know, give me a picture of a pretty girl with a hungry child. What do you notice? So is that the kind of art and expression that kids should engage in, right? So a guy took a picture of Safina Lee from MIT Media Lab and Cynthia. They were presenting this poster in a session that I was discussing, right?
But the other thing about those images, they were just like the con guy, right?
Yeah.
It was all passive instruction.
All passive instruction, yeah, right? Yeah, listening, right? So again, like it brings up these issues. You now see the thread that I'm weaving here, right? That there are problematic issues about AI. So we need to prepare teachers to also understand these issues, but challenge these systems and teach against technology as well and against AI, even as it may help with some of the things that they deal with in the day-to-day classroom. So Andrew's gonna.
Yeah, so we kind of started by, we had some asynchronous materials and a session where we talked about starting with some of the harms that could be caused by machine learning outside of education. So we assigned some readings talking about, here we have an example of, this is an early facial recognition algorithm. And the author of this facial recognition algorithm actually talked about how he discovered, many years before it was well known that his algorithm only worked on white faces, right? And it's been, and that issue has propagated. we have an example of a police surveillance using closed circuit television. And these are all these are Grab, or no, actually this is Gojek. This is in Indonesia, but it's a similar kind of like Uber Eats, a gig economy. How these people's lives are being livelihoods are being controlled by the algorithms that dictate where and how people work and how they get paid, etc. So now looking at education in particular, we have this is a quote from like a big AI influencer who, with the techno-utopianist vision that AI is going to completely change education, and then we see with the introduction of ChatGPT, people trying to do whack-a-mole, trying to find who's using ChatGPT, and Turnitin system is not working because it is theoretically impossible to detect with certainty that somebody has used ChatGPT. And another research paper actually showing evidence that these detectors are biased against non-native English speakers. And an example from the legal world, there's a lot of legal assistants and other assistants in various domains where saying we're going to put our trust and actually, in this little quote, offload the heavy lifting of litigation onto the AI. Can you imagine, your lawyer is just is just typing it into ChatGPT and then just calling it a day, right? So what the framing that we tried to introduce to teacher educators is critical AI ethics. So what we mean by that is criticality, referring to critical theory like critical race theory and feminism, challenging the systems of power and looking at how are these supposedly neutral algorithms wielding and reinforcing existing systems of power. From not just from an individual perspective, but from a systematic perspective. And think about the motivation behind all of these AI tools. Like, what are they actually trying to do? Who's pushing these? What are their motivations for introducing a bunch of AI tutors in the classroom? Is it really to make teaching better, or is it to kind of reduce the teacher workload and kind of deal with the problem of, oh, well, all these teachers are resigning because we're not paying them enough. I guess we'll just replace them with AI. And thinking about the values that are centered there. So we have some guiding principles that if our schools are trying to equitably serve our students, then we should analyze how is AI being used and affecting equity, and how is AI going to exacerbate or even create new systems of inequity by their introduction. And because this system is, the world of AI tools is moving so fast, I want us to focus on what is the real technology, what is happening right now, how is it being applied, and we can look at future developments in the future, but don't just get swept up in the hype and Sal Khan saying, well, this is just going to completely revolutionize everything. Let's look at what we actually have and how it can benefit our teachers and students.
Yeah, so quickly, we as a part of our summer camp, we asked faculty their perspective, what role could AI play in education, and this is before they came to our summer workshop. Majority of them do believe that it should be part of teacher education and training. It'll improve aspects of training, right? There's some resistance to that AI will revolutionize educational practice, right? But disagree with things like AI will make some teaching or will threaten teaching careers, and the majority of them don't agree with statements like that. And then we also asked them, what's the importance of AI in education? So right off the bat, remember this is before they came to our workshop. Majority of them, all of them agreed that ethics of AI should be the thing that we should all focusing on, right? And then to some extent, it could enhance personalized support, right, which is the number 2, and then finally number 8, identify bored students in lessons, right? Video surveillance, that's not something cool that we should be doing in the classroom. Again, we're just following up with interviews with these faculty, because as a part of the summer camp, all 21 faculty develop artifacts around AI in education and implement that in their classroom. So that now they've implemented, we're following up with more in-depth interviews, and then we'll supplement that. And we presented this at AERA. Me, Andrew, and Nick had a paper there, and then we'll just have a more qualitative in-depth paper to supplement this work.
Yeah.
But again, like just going back quick, we're not arguing, like we're not saying we shouldn't do AI, but we should consider implications of AI within all of this context of how does it work, what are the biases and problematized issues that we know exist, and then how then can they teach with and through AI, right? So they are critically aware and they can prepare their students to be critically aware of these issues as well. So. Right. Thank you. Comments, thoughts?
So I'm going to push back on a couple things, I think, right?
Yeah,
for,
do it.
For fun. So the first, right, there is this sort of notion with the one chalkboard quote that tech doesn't change things, right? But if we look, and that's true within a certain time period after the introduction of tech, it never lives up to the initial hype.
Yeah.
Right? But, right, on a generational time scale, right, as new generations grow up with the tech and incorporate it more and are better users of the tech, it does. Chalkboards did change things. We're still using whiteboards. Khan Academy is not used in classrooms, but a whole lot of students use it for homework, supplemental instruction and things in ways that were never available before. Right? So I think these technologies really do, on a longer time frame, change things, but it's more a generational time frame.
Yeah. So, can I respond to that quick, or do you have a follow-up question?
I was going to respond back. Go ahead, you can respond back. You're the responder.
Yes, I agree, right? Similarly, kids can still use AI to help them study, right? I was just home with my daughter's issues. She was reading Frankenstein. She's like, well, I have a midterm coming up, so I gotta, come up with a quiz, right? So I said, let's ask ChatGPT, like, come up with a quiz for Frankenstein, and it came up with a quiz, and she's like, those are stupid questions, like, right? That was her response. But then again, like, who is she? Like, what's her background? Like, who's benefiting from these tools, right? Not, like, even with Khan Academy, okay? Who's benefiting from that tool, right? You need internet. Let's think about Detroit. 50% of the households don't have broadband access. Median income is $29,000, right? So as Andrew pointed out, it's not just about, we're not against the technology. We need to consider, like, how does it increase the existing inequities that all exist, right? So on a generational scale, who's benefiting from this, right? All students are not benefiting equally from this work. So then what are the implications for us as teacher educators, as educators, to make sure that the kinds of schools we work in, right, are not just where, as someone just said recently, pretty kids go to, right? Right. So I think that's what we're trying to say and push our thinking.
And those are all really important policy questions, right? That's been the case for a while. My second pushback is this, right?
Do you want to respond?
Oh, I was going to say the issue that comes up is it the blackboard or video could have amazing effects. The problem is the blackboard and video was used just to present information rather than to engage kids.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
That's the, so it's they're leaving things out. I mean, Khan is like the worst example, right? It's
Yeah.
just instead of getting bored during the day, you get bored at night.
And that's the issue, right? They think of instruction as drill and practice, right? We rarely think of instruction like technology is how does it shift teachers' pedagogical approaches in ways that becomes more student-centered and active, right? Rather than just, that was a ChatGPT images that Joe pointed out, right? Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So that leads into my second piece, right? Because I'm not sure we could point to anything that has, on a long-term basis, led teachers to be more student engaged and non-demonstrative in practice, right? I don't, it's hard to find anything that was a sustained reform that was successful in doing that. which leads to this issue of what I'll call intellectual humility, right? Because while it's really easy for us to be critical of others, tech pros or what have you, and their little things, right? If we look at ourselves, right, how many educational reform movements have we proposed with great, this is going to be changing education, right? And then, that have underperformed or not performed, right? If we exercised our same critical lens on ourselves, we would be awfully critical of literally every educational research that we've ever done.
Yeah, I'd like to think that, well, one, we're not in it for the money. Two, that even as we have these reforms, they're more evidence driven, right? That as things come up, like we look like national academies as an example, right? That I don't know the history of NGSS, but I think that's when they released the first working group that led to NGSS. Is that correct? I don't know.
The framework.
The framework, right?
But that was but actually it's a whole history starting with taking how people learn, right?
Yeah, right.
The whole developmental sequence that led to NGSS.
Yeah, so I think like there's a little bit more evidence-based rather than, just having a tool that's not evidence-based and just citing anecdotal evidence of, and this is true, like being critical of, I'm in computer science education, and we've totally screwed that up, especially in Michigan, right? In teachers, anybody who teach CS, you don't need any certification, right? Principal says, we need to offer CS, you are it. And we have English teacher teaching CS, right? Because the teacher needs to, and of course is to teach, right? So, but we keep doing it.
I'm just gonna say it flies the other way too, Mr. Bag. Had one of the best tech teachers who didn't have it, because she wouldn't be able to teach if she'd been required at her age to go back for certification. We never had it.
True.
One of the best experiences my kids ever had.
Yeah.
So yes, but also thank you for this, because it also brought to mind some other challenges I had never thought about. For example, you talked about personal tutors. I could definitely see, in my experience, people saying, we don't have to DEI because they have their own personal tutor online. So we no longer have to face those challenges. Let's focus on something else because AI has taken care of that for us.
Yeah.
And things like that, I can just hear people that I know saying this stuff in my head. As well, having been a peer pro and other things as well. So.
I just need an AI email person who just like reads my email and just responds to it.
Like Aman was saying, it was like the trend of personalized learning has always been, as long as we've been trying to apply technology to education, it's always been about personalizing the learning. But and it's not that there hasn't been that technology hasn't been useful in some ways. It's that the notion that we've now personalized learning is I think misleading and causing some of that like misallocation of resources and things.
And like we're just Andrew, Michael, and I. We have a rapid AI grant that we submitted last year, and we're just doing a design study with teacher candidates here. That Andrew's done a couple of the interviews so far, where we're having them engage with ChatGPT and say like, give us your perspectives. How do you think it applies to the work that you're doing here in the teacher education program, like designing lesson plans and stuff, right? But the study could also be done with in-service teachers, like how they actually use it, right? And do they see value in it, right? So letting again like data inform how this actually gets implemented or not.
And can I just say, I think so. I've interviewed several pre-service teachers so far, and I think it's so interesting how they are, at least the ones that I talk to, are enamored with, in a lot of ways, with using ChatGPT. And I think it's good that they're getting some use out of it, being able to decrease some of their load. But also, I'm seeing some of those misconceptions about like we're going to offload, some of the heavy lifting of. Instructional design onto the AI. So I think that just points to the importance of this kind of teacher education work that we did with Scite, is helping teacher educators understand what are these tools really, and thinking about the equity impacts of them and how to work with their pre-service teachers.
The other point that's come up lately in our research team conversations is, like teachers don't often have, even within their school buildings, play a role in deciding what technologies get bought and get implemented, right? It's the school leadership that just goes to wine and dine or golf trips where decisions are made and teachers are not part of that conversation. Right? So how do we also include teachers as these tools are developed and get implemented in the classroom and having their voice heard and how decisions are made?
The figures that you showed at the end of your presentation, did I hear you correctly that those were the teachers' responses before?
Yep,
this
this is the pre-survey.
Before, yeah.
Did you collect similar data after, and did their perceptions of this stuff change?
We,
at all?
we did, but we haven't looked at it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. We don't, yeah.
It's
yeah.
not published.
If not published, yeah. My guess would be like ethics of AI probably went 100% strongly agree are very important because we talked about, we had an explicit module just on ethics of AI. But we're doing interviews, and that's what we're more interested in, like how did their actual implementation of AI in their class, in the teacher education courses, how did that go? Right, so we're doing that interviews right now, and consistently it's come up for me at least, the ones that I've done, that most teacher candidates have not used generative AI, right? Which surprised me,
Or at least that's the perception.
or at least
of
that's what
our-
they're telling
of
their
the teacher
faculty,
educators.
right?
At least a year ago, when they were implementing this, like last fall, we were hearing that a lot of teacher educators were like, we're introducing this to a lot of our teacher candidates for the first time. This is like, they're learning about it for the first time in our class.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, as a field instructor, like I had my last seminar last week, and I felt like I needed to spend the seminar introducing none of them had used it.
Okay.
One student mentioned she used, I didn't even know Snapchat had, she asked it to give her different levels of reading
Yeah.
to help, and that was it.
Snapchat has that?
They do.
Apparently, I don't know.
I'm not on Snapchat.
But that
so-
was out of like all the interns
Yeah,
I worked
yeah,
with all year,
okay.
and I don't. Part of me was like, I don't want to introduce it to them at the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah.
When should they know,
Yeah.
and what should they try before they know? I don't
Yeah.
know. So I wondered if I know that you have a grant and
Yeah.
you're introducing it to some.
Yeah.
But what does
Yeah.
MSU? I mean, and if I wasn't their field instructor, they wouldn't have gotten it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know when to introduce, like Lisa, Limerick Garcia, Jen, and I had a conversation about like most of the worries about, or brief conversation, most of the worries about generative AI is like kids are gonna cheat, right? Right. So that's a very like from a motivational perspective, and Jen just jump in if I just completely get this wrong. Very much a performance-oriented approach that I'm just using it to get a good grade because that's what I focus on, as opposed to mastery-oriented approach. Like how can you use it to be better and learn myself, right? But that's a worry across the street in like in a CS. I'm teaching an intro to Python course next spring, and I'm like, I'm gonna be open. Like if you're gonna use it, right? I'm not gonna stop you from using it because even professional programmers, go to Stack Exchange to solve problems if they're encounter anything. Like, so why are we stopping kids from using it, right? It's just be quicker rather than going on Stack Exchange to find solutions to an error that they might have. So I think like that's like, how do we shift that it's about learning better and being better at whatever you're doing rather than just solve this problem for me, right? The way like I've thought about it is in the context of computer science or computational thinking is that if you look at a triangle of tools, problems, and people, right? It's a triangle, right? They all need to work together to solve problems, right? Technology is just a tool to solve a problem that you're interested in, right? And I think that's framing we can use, that it's just a tool that can help you solve a problem. It's not gonna solve the problem for you, right? In the short term, yes, it'll write up a lesson plan for you, but then when you go in the classroom, you have to adapt, you might be given existing lessons, and how do you adapt those lessons? I don't know the answer.
Teaching CMC 201 next semester?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently in it right now. we allow ChatGPT use in CMC 201 right now on everything from in-class assignments to homework to the quizzes and the project. They just have to cite it, and citing it is they will give the prompts that they asked ChatGPT and then what the response was. Because the goal is not to have them use it to completely do the assignment for them, but be a tool in furthering their understanding. But what I've seen is, compared to like Stack Overflow, where you're gonna find something that's not exactly for your problem, the issue that I've seen with students is they'll ask it just the problem, they're not gonna interrogate the answer, because to someone who's not familiar with coding, it looks very reasonable. So they're like, oh, okay, this is great, and then they turn in, and then when I go to grade it, it's not what you want it to be. And just the other thing with the exposure to LLMs, large language models, I've seen search engines such as like Bing, they now have like they still have a large language model like just on the side after you just type in a search bar. So people may be interacting with these large language models without even knowing that that's what was happening. Because you see a box generate something like, oh, okay, what is this? And it ends up being a large language model. So I've only seen that expanding from last semester to this semester. I didn't see search engines incorporating it. So I really think in the next year or so, we're going to see LLMs almost every aspect of every social media app, every search engine. They're going to incorporate it, at least partially.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of focus here on the LLM side of things, right? But you know, a lot of the progress in AIs recently have been image generation, including fake image generation.
Yeah.
Sort of where are you seeing that, right? Because that's an interesting model in terms of it's a real accelerant for creatives who are trying to do something. You get initial ideas and generate initial kind of images and video very quickly, right? But with this big negative overhang of the potential to falsify images or create hallucinated images, and you know, we're going to see nothing but that for the next 6 months.
Yeah, or even video.
Oh yeah, video in particular, right?
So I was talking to Ken Durkin, who works for Michigan Virtual, and Ken's like, oh, what's this video? It's him giving a talk for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. He said, all I did was, it had me sit in front of a computer, record a 10-second clip, and then I uploaded my presentation, and it just created the 10-minute video for me. And it looks as real as if he was himself recorded it. You know?
Does it make you thinner too?
I'm like,
I like that idea.
yeah.
Good use.
Right? But like that's the real worry in terms of, you know, falsification of anything, right? I don't know if you've all seen that video of Obama saying some random stuff, right? I think this is where I think that like computing and digital literacies really becomes important for students to be able to, like, no, Obama would never say that, right? And maybe there is based on your leanings, you're like, oh sure, he said that, right? But I think media information literacy becomes important in this context, that people can go and verify, not just, you know, trust what if they saw one 15-second video on Snapchat.
So something I'm also concerned, or like thinking about, is the labor aspect of this, because so a lot of like illustrators and photographers are worried that they're going to be replaced by image generators, and they have good cause for, you know, outrage, because Getty Images is suing image generators because you can literally type in like some prompts, and there will be like it will generate an image with a little like Getty Images watermark on it, because the training data was so full of watermarked
But do
images.
you really think that's a problem? Right? Because you know, those are well, in that particular case, some of those are proprietary.
I know we're gonna have the whole copyright, copyleft argument here, but
Sure.
but I think from, you know, so from a legal perspective, I do think that what they're doing is you know, illegal, and I do think it is illegal because they're using proprietary images. But I also think that it's immoral to use other people's work without their compensation, and these image generators would not exist without all of those proprietary images. Let's be clear, right? People aren't, the people designing the algorithms aren't going around like taking all of these pictures and then uploading them in. They're building off of all of these thousands of other people's labor without paying them for it.
Yeah. Just one more thing. I'd say the biggest failing, I think, with the class I'm a part of this semester is we expect, well, we're allowing students to use ChatGPT, but we didn't teach them the skills that they would need to actually use it correctly as a tool. Like, we don't really teach them to interrogate the answers at all. And I really think going forward, I'm going to give this feedback obviously to the instructors, that we need to spend a day at the start of the semester talk about how do you interact with these models in a way that can support your learning rather than replacing your learning. Because, like I said before, they're not interrogating the answers. And with ChatGPT, it's very good at sounding reasonable. So when it gives you something reasonable, it's easy to move on and not think about it.
I would just add to that, this is the thing that I study motivation, and the motivational implications for the use of these technologies is really fascinating to me, because if you think about a construct like self-efficacy, that is, your belief in your ability to do something, what does using a tool like this correctly versus versus incorrectly mean for things like your self-efficacy and all that's related to that? I think that's a fascinating question.
I know we're over time.
Thanks,
Well,
everyone.
thank you very much.
Everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So we're at a different site on a day. Right? There's a day
No, you should put that image up so that it's
Yeah. Well, now you know what I'm in my sabbatical. So.
I think part of the problem is because it's against everything it needs to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.